I wasn't expecting her until late afternoon. Sunday mornings had their own rhythm in our house. The coffee brewed slow. The news played low in the background. I usually took a walk around the block, maybe two. But that morning, I sat at the kitchen table, fully dressed by 6:45 a.m., sipping black coffee and watching the minute hand twitch towards 7 o'clock. It's like my body knew something before my brain did. Maybe that's why I left the manila envelope on the kitchen counter. Or why my suitcase stood zipped beside the door. Some part of me knew she'd show up early, unannounced, like a thief coming back for what she forgot. Sure enough, at 6:58 a.m., I heard the sound of tires crunching the gravel in our driveway. It wasn't loud, just the soft, nervous roll of someone hoping not to be noticed. Car door shut. Then came the sound of suitcase wheels tapping against the pavement. Slow, like she wasn't sure if she should keep walking. I stood up and opened the front door before she even made it to the welcome mat. And there she was, Haley. Same black dress she'd left in on Friday morning. Black heels in one hand, a small silver suitcase in the other. Her makeup was smudged, and her eyes, once quick and bright, looked tired. Tired in a way I couldn't unsee. I didn't say anything at first. Neither did she. The air between us was heavy, like a conversation had already happened without either of us saying a word. "Hey," she mumbled, her voice scratchy from hours of either crying, yelling, or maybe just lying. "Hey," I said back, calm. Too calm, maybe. She looked past me into the house. "You're up early. So are you." Her eyes dropped to the suitcase by the door, then lifted to the folder on the table behind me. I stepped aside and let her walk in. She moved like she was on a stage, waiting for someone to yell, "Cut." I closed the door gently behind her. She didn't sit. She didn't ask. She just stood in the center of the living room, taking it all in, like she was checking to see what had changed in her absence. "It smells like wood polish," she said, too quietly. "I cleaned the place yesterday. You don't usually do that. I don't usually get a weekend alone." That line hit her. Her expression flickered, guilt, maybe, or annoyance. It was hard to tell anymore. Lately, everything she did felt calculated, like she was already rewriting the version of events she could live with. I walked over to the kitchen counter and picked up the folder. Thick, official-looking, cream-colored paper inside. I'd handled it all while she was gone. The timing wasn't a coincidence. "Here," I said, offering it to her. She looked at it like it was radioactive. "What is it?" "The signed agreement. I sold my share of the business to Eric. Transferred everything. I'm out." Silence. She didn't take it. Just stood there, stunned, blinking. You what?" "I'm out," I repeated. "The business, the partnership, all of it." Her brow furrowed. "Why would you, Nick? That's your family's legacy. Your father built that company." "Yeah," I said, "and I kept it alive for 19 years. You remember how many nights I stayed up handling payroll? Or how many vacations we canceled so I could fix someone else's screw-up? You told me more than once how much you resented that place. So I listened. You did this because of me?" "No," I said calmly. "I did it for me. But I won't pretend you weren't part of the equation." She finally took a step forward, grabbed the folder, and flipped through it. As she read the signatures, the dates, the notary stamps, her fingers started to tremble. "I didn't ask you to walk away from it," she said. "No, you just asked for space. Freedom. Less stress. Less of me hovering. Less of everything that made me who I was. So I let go." "This isn't what I meant." "I think it is," I said, meeting her eyes. She opened her mouth to argue, then stopped herself. Instead, she dropped her suitcase beside the couch and walked to the kitchen island, where she placed the folder like it had burned her hands. "This is emotional blackmail," she said finally. "You're trying to guilt me. You're trying to show me what I've done to you." I smiled, but not kindly. "No, Haley, I'm showing you what you said you wanted. I just removed myself from the list of people you get to control." That landed. Her face flushed, and she looked away, but not before I saw the flicker in her eyes. Panic. I'd seen her pull away before. On family holidays she skipped. On late nights she said were work emergencies. On her so-called leadership seminars that never came with pictures or stories. She'd been slipping through my fingers for months. But this was the first time she realized I wasn't going to chase her anymore. "You're not thinking clearly," she said. "No," I said, grabbing the handle of my suitcase. "I'm thinking clearer than I have in years." She watched as I walked toward the door. She didn't follow, didn't beg. Maybe part of her still thought she could fix it with a text or a few soft tears later. But I was done falling for rehearsed apologies. At the door, I turned around one last time. "You don't have to say anything, really. But I want you to understand something." She didn't speak, so I kept going. "I gave you everything I had, Haley. And when that wasn't enough, I gave you space. And when that still wasn't enough, I gave you an exit." Her arms folded across her chest, but her shoulders sagged, like the weight was finally settling in. "This isn't me punishing you," I added. "It's me choosing myself for once." She looked like she wanted to scream or sob, but instead, she just said, "So what now? You're just going to disappear?" "No," I said. "I'm going to start over. Without you." And with that, I opened the door. She didn't try to stop me. The last thing I saw as I stepped outside was her sitting on the couch we used to curl up on every Sunday. The same couch where I'd nursed her through a stomach flu, where we'd watched movies in sweatpants, and fallen asleep mid-conversation more times than I could count. Now she sat there alone, the folder on her lap, the truth weighing more than either of us ever admitted. I didn't feel triumphant, but I felt free. The morning I left, I didn't drive fast. I didn't blast music or scream into the steering wheel. I just drove. Slow, deliberate. The kind of driving you do when your whole life has just untied itself from the anchor you thought was permanent. The city looked exactly the same, but I saw it differently now. Not through a windshield smeared with hope or excuses. Just glass. Just clarity. Somewhere between our house and the highway, memories started lining up like mile markers. I didn't ask for them, they just came. And the worst part? They weren't loud. They didn't shout. They whispered. Subtle moments I'd brushed off, reframed, or outright ignored. Like that weekend she went to San Diego for a personal growth seminar. I'd stayed home to finish paperwork for the business. She left in a rush, barely kissing me goodbye, blaming traffic. When she came back, she was distant. Said the retreat had opened her eyes, and that she needed to make room in her life for things that mattered. I thought I was one of those things. I was wrong. Then there were the changing passwords. First, it was just her phone. Then her laptop. Then the joint cloud account. When I asked about it, she told me she was taking cybersecurity seriously. Said she didn't want her personal development notes getting hacked. I didn't push. I wanted to respect her independence. God, I really thought I was being a good partner. And then the way she stopped asking me to join her for anything, work functions, casual dinners, even movie nights with her sister. I'd catch her getting dressed up, curling her hair in that half-up twist she knew I loved, spraying her signature vanilla perfume. I'd ask where she was going, and she'd just shrug. "It's a company thing." Or, "Just Haley time. You know I need my space." I didn't question it. I thought giving her space was loving her the right way. She used to laugh at my clinginess back in the early years, called it cute. But later, when she was slipping away inch by inch, I turned that part of myself off. I stopped asking questions. I stopped double texting. I stopped showing up with last-minute flowers just because. I was scared of looking desperate. She didn't want a man who smothered her, she said. So I held the leash loose, and while I stood still, she ran. Even family holidays became a sore spot. Thanksgiving 2 years ago, she told my mom she had food poisoning, but I remember the text that came through from a hotel in Monterey. When I asked, she brushed it off, said it was for work and that I was making something out of nothing. I let it go. Just another red flag I chose to fold up and put in my pocket. Looking back, every one of those moments was a warning bell. But I didn't hear them because I'd already decided not to. That's the thing people don't tell you about betrayal. It's not usually a grand, cinematic reveal. It's a quiet erosion. A slow drip of disconnect until one day, you're standing in your kitchen, holding divorce documents, wondering how long you've been living with a stranger. I remember one night vividly. It was raining, the soft kind that makes everything glow under street lamps. She was upstairs, laughing on a call she claimed was with her sister. But when I walked past the door, her voice dropped. She turned away from me like I'd walked in on something private. I told myself it was fine. I told myself she deserved privacy. And maybe she did. But what she didn't deserve was a husband who bent himself into shapes trying to accommodate a version of her that didn't exist anymore. I once caught her deleting text messages. I asked jokingly if she was hiding a secret admirer. She didn't even laugh, just gave me that look. The one that says, "Don't start. Don't ruin this moment." So I didn't. Instead, I made us tea and talked about vacation plans. She nodded a lot but never committed. The next day she told me she needed a solo trip, just a few days away to reset. Alone. Somewhere coastal. Somewhere quiet. I paid for the Airbnb myself, told her to have a good time. She didn't even send one photo. Even int asterisk Macy changed. She used to run her fingers through my hair when we watched TV. Kiss my forehead when I was half asleep. Those small, quiet affections that made a marriage feel like more than logistics. But over time, she pulled back. We went from entwined limbs to carefully separated bodies, like two people renting space from each other. And I just kept adjusting. Like a thermostat she never wanted set too high. There's this memory that keeps playing in my head. A nothing moment. Really? A Thursday evening. I came home early from the shop. I brought takeout from that Thai place she liked. Walked in the door smiling, ready to surprise her. But she wasn't alone. She was in the backyard, laughing with someone on FaceTime. Her eyes lit up in a way they hadn't for me in months. I saw it from the kitchen window and something in me stopped. I didn't interrupt. I left the food on the counter and took a walk around the block. When I came back, she was inside. Alone again. She asked where I'd gone. I told her I had to take a call. We ate in silence. That was 9 months ago. And it was the night I started packing my heart into little boxes. Getting ready for something I wasn't brave enough to name. They say love is blind, but that's not true. Love sees everything, it just chooses not to care. It chooses to hope, to wait, to believe that people can come back to who they were. But some people don't come back. Some people never intended to. The red flags weren't hidden. I just kept folding them into excuses because the alternative, that she had already left me emotionally, was too painful to confront. I spent 19 years believing that love meant staying. Now I know better. Sometimes, love means leaving first. Not out of anger. Not even out of revenge. But because your heart deserves a place it doesn't have to beg for attention. A place where it can just be. As I drove past the sign that marked the edge of our town, I didn't cry. I didn't curse her name. I just whispered something to myself. So soft I'm not even sure I meant for it to be heard. I should have left a long time ago. The week before she left for Santa Cruz, everything felt just a little off. Haley had been acting more upbeat than usual, hyper-focused on details she normally brushed off, like which sandals to pack or whether the Airbnb had a good mirror for getting ready pics. She bought a new black wrap dress, told me she'd probably only wear it once, and she kept saying things like, "I just really need this weekend," or "It's been such a long year. We hadn't been fighting. We hadn't even really been talking." It was the kind of peace you get when both people have quietly stopped trying. On Wednesday night, she left her tablet charging in the kitchen. That wasn't unusual. What was unusual was that she didn't take it to bed with her. Normally it was practically glued to her, Pinterest boards, digital journals, the occasional Netflix show. But that night, she left it on the counter, plugged in, unattended. I didn't go looking. I swear to God I didn't. I was pouring a glass of water when the screen lit up. Just a simple notification from the Photos app. Your memory from this day last year. Curiosity isn't always a choice. Sometimes it grabs you by the gut. I tapped it, and that's when everything stopped. There was a photo, just one, automatically grouped into a memory. Haley was in it. So was he. They were standing next to each other by a pool I didn't recognize. The light was soft, sunset maybe. His shirt was open. Hers wasn't a bikini I'd ever seen before. Her hand rested casually, too casually, on his chest. Her head tilted toward him just slightly. Their smiles weren't wide, but they were int asterisk mate. The kind of smile you give someone when you don't need to say anything out loud. I stared at it for a full minute. Then I took a screensh asterisk T. My hands shook as I airdropped it to my own phone. Quietly, I made sure the original was left untouched, unmarked. Then I locked her tablet and set it right back where I found it. I stood there in the kitchen for what felt like an hour, listening to the low hum of the refrigerator. She was asleep upstairs, wrapped in the sheets we bought on a trip to Mendocino, the kind of trip that used to be full of shared playlists and tangled feet. Now, she was curled up next to a version of me that was still too trusting, still believing that long silences were just part of growing older. But that photo, that was proof. I didn't need context. I didn't need a timestamp. I knew what I was looking at. I knew that the hotel in the background had the same name she'd mentioned last fall when she said she was going on a leadership retreat in Palm Springs. I even remembered the way she'd said it, like it was something noble, something bigger than us. That man, him, I recognized him too. The same guy she always mentioned in passing. Her travel buddy from work. Always in group sh*ts. Always cropped just right on Instagram. Never tagged. Never named. I'd asked about him once. She said he was just a friend. Then she rolled her eyes and told me not to be paranoid. So I hadn't been. Until now. I didn't sleep that night. I just lay there, staring at the ceiling, my heart thudding so hard I thought it might wake her. My brain ran laps around every moment I'd ever questioned but never pressed. There was no confrontation, no scene. I didn't wake her up and demand answers. I didn't scream or throw the tablet across the room. I just started making quiet decisions. First, I called my brother and scheduled a meeting to finalize the sale of my share of the business. He'd been asking about buying me out for years, always joking about how I'd probably never actually leave. I told him I was serious this time. No back and forth. Just draw up the paperwork. He didn't ask why. Then I called a real estate agent I trusted from back in college. Asked her about short-term rentals along the coast. I wanted something remote but livable. A place I could disappear to without disappearing entirely. I deleted shared cloud passwords. Canceled auto payments that linked to our joint accounts. I wasn't hiding, just untangling. Gently, like pulling thread from a sweater you no longer wear. Over the next few days, I pretended everything was normal. We ate dinner together Thursday night. She was on her phone most of the time, smiling at messages she didn't share with me. I asked if she was excited about the Bachelorette weekend. She said, "So excited," and kissed me on the cheek like a wife in a sitcom. I even offered to take her to the airport. She declined, saying her sister had it covered. Friday morning, she left in a whirlwind of perfume and soft curls, dragging that silver suitcase behind her. The same one that would sit beside her 3 days later when she returned early, unannounced, and found me already halfway out the door. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Back to that photo. I looked at it more times than I care to admit. Not because I needed more proof, but because part of me still didn't believe it. Part of me wanted to catch something. Anything that would make it all okay again. A stray shadow. A third person just out of frame. A chance that her hand wasn't really resting where it looked like it was. But there was no saving that image. It was too clean. Too honest. She hadn't made a mistake. This wasn't one of those regrettable, heat-of-the-moment stories people confess after 2 glasses of wine and a guilty conscience. This was premeditated, coordinated, carefully edited out of sight. And maybe that's what hurt the most. The effort she put into hiding it. It meant I hadn't just lost her heart. I'd lost her respect. She hadn't been worried about being caught. She'd been confident I wouldn't look. Confident I wouldn't question her narrative. And for a long time she was right. That's what being the trusting husband gets you. You get to be the last one to know. I didn't tell anyone at first. Not my brother. Not my friends. Not even the therapist I'd occasionally checked in with back when we were struggling a few years ago. I didn't want sympathy. I didn't want advice. I just wanted to be alone with the truth. Sometimes, silence is more comforting than anyone's version of "you'll get through this." I watched the world from behind a mask for the next several days. Nodded in meetings, responded to texts, smiled when the neighbor asked how Haley and I were doing. "She's out of town," I said. "Girls' weekend." And wasn't that the truth? It was a weekend, all right. A full itinerary of beach walks, cocktail bars, late-night whispers. But I wasn't in the group chat anymore. Maybe I never really was. The decision to walk away didn't come from anger. It didn't come from a desire to punish her or to make her feel what I was feeling. It came from that single photo. One frame, one still moment in time. And it told me everything I needed to know. There's this odd sensation that hits you after heartbreak, right after the chaos clears. An eerie sort of calm, like stepping out of a burning house and realizing you don't even smell like smoke anymore. I wasn't numb. I wasn't angry. I was still, for the first time in years. Once I left, I drove aimlessly for a day or two. I stayed at a motel just outside Big Sur, one of those places that smells like mildew and old memories, where the vending machine hums louder than the TV. It wasn't glamorous, but it gave me space to think without someone asking me how I was doing. I didn't tell anyone where I was. Not even my brother, who probably guessed but didn't push. The silence felt earned. It was like my mind had been at a screaming concert for years and now, finally, the music had stopped. One morning, I took my coffee out to the little concrete balcony outside my room. A coastal fog had rolled in heavy. You couldn't see 20 feet in front of you. But the air smelled clean pine, sea salt, damp earth. I realized I hadn't taken a deep breath like that in a long, long time. That's when I remembered the workshop. Years ago, I used to mess around with wood. Not professionally, just enough to build a few birdhouses, a bookshelf, a crooked coffee table Haley once said had character. I used to love the feeling of sanding something down to smoothness. Watching rough lumber become something useful, something honest. So I looked up available commercial rentals near the coast. Nothing fancy. I didn't need a polished studio or a storefront on Main Street. Just a place with 4 walls, a roof, and the smell of sawdust baked into the floorboards. I found one. An old bait and tackle shop that had closed down a year earlier, tucked between a surfboard rental and a defunct ice cream parlor. The place had dust on the windows and dead flies in the corners, but the moment I stepped inside, I saw it. The vision. Not of a business, but of a life that made sense again. I signed the lease that afternoon. Used the funds from my business buyout. No partners. No meetings. No complicated spreadsheets or quarterly targets. Just me, some salvage tools, and an idea I hadn't dared let grow until now. I spent the next few weeks fixing it up. Painted the walls a deep navy blue, the kind that looks almost black in the wrong light but absolutely sings when sunlight hits it right. Installed workbenches. Built shelves from reclaimed barnwood. Put up pegboards for hand tools. I even made a sign, Timber Shore Studio, carved it myself, just me and a chisel and a podcast in the background. It was honest work. No shortcuts. Every blister on my hands made more sense than half the arguments I'd had with Haley the past 5 years. The studio wasn't just for me. That was the whole point. I wanted people to come in, learn how to build something. Not just furniture, but confidence. Presence. The kind of quiet self-belief that comes from holding a thing you made with your own 2 hands. At first, I advertised by stapling flyers on coffee shop corkboards. Nothing high-tech. Just a photo of the shop, some handwritten info, and a line that said, "Learn something real." No experience needed. That's how Riley found me. She walked in one Wednesday morning, hair tucked under a knit cap, eyes scanning the place like it was sacred. She couldn't have been more than 21. Said she was taking a break from college, wanted something grounded. Her dad had been a client at my old firm, Small World, I guess. "I don't know what I'm doing," she said right away. "But I'm tired of pretending like I do." That hit me harder than she probably meant it to. I handed her a piece of cedar and showed her how to plane the edge flat. She showed up again the next day. And the day after that. We didn't talk much at first. Just worked. I'd put on music, Fleetwood Mac, Gregory Alan Issakoff, old soul stuff. Sometimes we'd talk about the grain of the wood. Other times we'd just share space in silence. It wasn't romantic. Not even close. She was a kid, really. But she was also the first person in a long time who didn't treat me like I was broken. She didn't tiptoe around me, didn't try to give me unsolicited advice or awkward sympathy. She just showed up. She paid attention. She built things. Over time, other students trickled in. A retired teacher who always wanted to build a dining table. A single dad looking for a way to bond with his teenage son. A couple on the rocks trying to rebuild something with their hands before their hearts. It became a rhythm. Not a job. A rhythm. I still thought about Haley. Of course I did. She'd been my everyday for almost 2 decades. I wondered if she regretted it. If she lay awake wondering why I hadn't fought harder. But then I'd sand down a fresh cut of walnut, watch the grain come alive under my fingertips, and the thoughts would drift away. The studio gave me something she couldn't, peace that didn't depend on someone else's approval. I never posted about her. Never told the students what had happened. It wasn't their story to carry. And honestly, I was tired of being defined by the worst thing someone else did to me. The day Riley finished her first project, a hand-carved stool with a live edge top, she looked at it like she couldn't believe her own hands had made it. Then she looked at me and said, "I feel more like myself in here than I do anywhere else." I nodded. Didn't say much. Just patted her on the shoulder and told her it was damn good work. But inside? Inside I felt something move. Not revenge. Not triumph. Something gentler. Something that didn't need Haley to witness it in order to matter. People expect anger. They expect destruction. Burn the wedding photos. Throw her clothes on the lawn. Broadcast your heartbreak in capital letters on social media. But the truth is, healing is often quiet. It's building shelves that won't tip. It's teaching someone how to square a frame. It's hearing your name spoken by someone who sees you as more than what you lost. The first month ended and we had a full class. 12 students. 12 stories. 12 reasons to keep going. Haley hadn't reached out. Not yet. Maybe she thought I'd come crawling back after the drama wore off. Maybe she believed her absence would ignite some desperate fire in me to chase her down, prove her wrong, win her back. She didn't know me anymore. She hadn't for a long time. This wasn't a revenge arc. This was a resurrection. And I wasn't building it for her to see. I was building it so I'd have something left to pass on, something no one could walk out on. The day Haley came back wasn't marked on any calendar. There was no text. No call. No warning. Just a knock at the workshop door on a late Saturday morning. It was the kind of day that smelled like salt and sawdust. Riley had shown up early to work on her second project, a cedar planter box, and we had music playing low over the old shop speakers. Cat Stevens, I think. The air was warm, the vibe was easy. Everything about that morning had felt right. Until the knock. I wiped my hands on a shop towel and walked to the front. Through the glass door, I saw the figure before I recognized her. Same stance. Same posture. Only now, her hair was darker, pulled into a tight bun, and she wore oversized sunglasses that hid half her face. But there was no mistaking her. Haley. For a moment, I thought I was seeing a ghost. Not the haunting kind, but the kind that reminds you just how far you've come. I opened the door. She took the glasses off, eyes already braced for something, anger, maybe, or condescension. She wasn't dressed like herself. At least not the version of herself I used to know. Beige coat. Matching scarf. Everything neutral, like she was trying not to take up space. "Nick," she said softly. "Haley." She looked past me into the shop. "I didn't realize you had students." "I always do on Saturdays," I said plainly. "You're here during my busiest hours." "I didn't know." She trailed off, then shook her head. "I'm not here to fight." "That's good." "I'm not here to host." For a second, she flinched like I'd slapped her. But then she nodded like she expected that. Like she'd practiced for it. "May I come in?" I didn't answer, but I stepped aside. She walked slowly, taking in the room. The smell of pine, the worn benches, the half-built furniture, and bits of curled shavings on the floor. Riley looked up from her project, brow furrowed. I gave her a small nod, "It's okay," and she went back to her work. Haley looked around like she didn't recognize the world I'd built. And maybe she didn't. This place wasn't made with her in mind. She took a few steps forward. "It's different." "It's not your kind of different," I replied. She smiled faintly. "No. But I can tell you care about it." I didn't respond. I wasn't interested in swapping pleasantries or pretending we were two friends catching up after a long hiatus. She gestured vaguely to Riley. "Is that your daughter?" I let out a dry laugh. "No. She's my apprentice." "Oh." Silence. She lingered by a finished table near the front window, walnut top, hand-sanded butterfly joints. She ran her fingers along the edge, the way she used to do at antique stores. "You made this?" she asked. "Every piece in here has my hands on it. One way or another." "I see that," she said. I watched her carefully. Her face was calmer than I expected, but not peaceful. There was an undercurrent of something unsettled. Not regret. More like uncertainty. Like she wasn't sure if she belonged in this version of my life. You didn't just drop by to admire the furniture, I said. Say what you came to say. She looked at Riley, then back at me. Can we talk somewhere private? No, I said. We don't do secrets in here. You want to say something? Say it. Then go. She stood a little straighter, cleared her throat. I came because I wanted to understand what you're doing with the space. I've heard from some mutual friends that you're rebuilding, that you've opened a business, that it's become a bit of a community hub. Her tone had shifted. Less curious, more controlled. Is that a problem? I asked. She hesitated. I was under the impression that the property was still under shared legal access. I almost laughed. Almost? You're a few steps behind, I said. I filed for complete partition weeks ago. There's nothing legally tying you to this place anymore. Her face didn't twitch. She was too polished for that. But I saw it in her eyes. That flicker of disbelief. Of loss. You never told me, she said quietly. You stopped being someone I owed explanations to the moment you came back early from that Bachelorette weekend and found the papers waiting. She looked down. That day, I didn't expect you to leave so cleanly. No, you expected a fight. Or a plea. Or some last dramatic scene where I threw my pride out the window just to keep you. She didn't deny it. Instead, she said, it's very quiet here. The sound of the tools, it's grounding. I know. She looked over at Riley again. She seems comfortable. She is. She reminds me of you, Haley added almost wistfully. She reminds me of who I used to be, I replied. Before everything got so performative. Haley took a step closer. Not toward me. Just toward the room. She was taking it in again, the photos on the wall, the row of chisels, the unfinished projects on each bench. It's strange, she said, to walk into something and feel like you don't have any claim to it. Even though your name was once on the deed. I met her eyes. Your name might have been on the paper. But this was never your space. Not really. You never asked about it. You never cared what I wanted to build. She nodded slowly. That's fair. She didn't try to argue. Didn't deflect. I'll give her that. But just as I started to think she'd say goodbye and leave, she surprised me. I have an offer, she said. One I think you'll want to consider. I folded my arms. Go on. I'd like to formally sell my remaining access rights. Clean break. You keep this place without interference. I walk away. My breath caught for half a second. Not because I didn't expect it, but because of the way she said it. So transactional. Like we were bartering over a used car. You came all the way out here just to say that? I thought it was better in person. Was it your idea? She hesitated. My partner suggested it. I raised an eyebrow. Your partner. A pause. Then, yes. He's not the man from before. It's someone else. Of course. I didn't flinch. I didn't ask for details. Whatever story existed between them now had nothing to do with me. I nodded slowly. Send the documents to my attorney. I'll have him review them. You're not even going to ask the price? No, I said. Because you're not negotiating from a place of power anymore. That one landed. She reached into her coat and pulled out a slim envelope. Placed it on the bench near me. Details are in there. You can counter if you want. I won't. She stood there for a moment longer like she wanted to say something else. Maybe something human. But the moment passed. She put her sunglasses back on, the armor sliding into place again. Goodbye, Nick. I didn't respond. I watched her walk out the door and into the sunlight. Riley looked up from her project. Was that her? She asked. Yeah, I said. What did she want? To see what she lost. Riley nodded slowly and went back to her work. Outside, the door clicked shut. Inside, the studio hummed with life. The envelope sat unopened for 2 days. I didn't need to read it to know I'd accept. The price was fair, I was sure of it. Haley never lowballed, she knew better than to try that with me. But more than the money, it was the symbolism. Her formally walking away from the last piece of our life together. I didn't feel triumphant. I just felt done. My lawyer reviewed it by Wednesday. It's clean, he said. Simple exit. No lingering entitlements. She's really letting go. Good, I said. Let her. By Friday, I signed. Haley didn't show up again. Her new partner handled the final handoff, a man dressed in quiet wealth and empty politeness. He introduced himself, but I forgot his name as soon as he said it. Not the same guy from the photo. Just another chapter in her reinvention tour. He tried to make small talk. I didn't bite. The workshop had changed by then. Riley had become more than a student. She helped teach the basics to newcomers, always patient, always present. People respected her quietly, steadily. She didn't talk about the past, and I didn't ask. We were two people rebuilding, side by side, without digging into the wreckage. I didn't realize until later that I had stopped waiting for closure. I didn't need it. The moment Haley signed those papers, she became history. Not a villain. Not a ghost. Just a name that no longer belonged in my story. The official opening of Timber Shore Studio happened on the first Saturday of October. We didn't send out formal invites. Word of mouth had done the work. Friends. Neighbors. Even a few old clients who'd heard I was doing something different now. We had food trucks parked outside, folding chairs set in rows beneath pine trees, and a string of Edison bulbs zigzagged across the front lot. There was no speech, no dramatic unveiling. Just work on display, tables, stools, shelves, even a few rough sculptures. People wandered in and out of the studio, touching with surfaces like they were sacred. Asking questions. Admiring joinery. There was music playing low, old records spinning softly. And there was Riley standing by the front bench with a finished project in her hands. It was a handcrafted sign, Timber Shore Studio, built by hands. Passed by heart. I didn't ask her to make it. She just did. When she handed it to me, I didn't say much. Just ran my hand over the grain and nodded. This is the legacy, I told her. And it was. Not just the shop. Not just the furniture. But the shift. From bitterness to purpose. From betrayal to belonging. Haley didn't come. Of course she didn't. Her chapter was over. And for the first time, I was glad she wasn't there to see what she missed. Not out of pettiness, just because it wasn't hers to witness anymore. That evening, as the last guests drifted away and the lights flickered in the trees, I sat on the front steps of the studio and watched the sky turn indigo. Riley joined me. Neither of us spoke for a while. Then she said, "You okay?" I nodded. "Yeah," I said. "More than okay." And I meant it. I hadn't rebuilt to prove anything. I'd rebuilt because I remembered who I was without her. And that version of me? He was worth preserving.